do this. So, hop day, everyone. My name is Joseph Certeza. I am a guest moderator with the Guam Island Film Festival. I'm also serving as the vice chair of the Guam Council of the Arts and Humanities. And I'm very fortunate today that I get to be on this amazing panel with two amazing filmmakers that our world has to offer around the adaptation culture. I'll pass the torch to Nick.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hafa day. Thanks for having me. So I'm Nick Brandestini. I'm from Zurich, Switzerland, and I'm a filmmaker. This is my third feature-length documentary. I only made documentaries so far. And so this is the third one called Sapelo, and it is about an island community in the US in the Atlantic Ocean that has a very unique way of life. And it's basically a portrait of the island called Sapelo Island.
And now I'm going to pass the torch to Miss Valeriya.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am a documentary filmmaker and cinematographer from Ukraine, but I also lived and studied and worked in different countries. And this documentary film was made in New Zealand, and it's about a family from Tokelau. And Tokelau is a group of adults in the middle of Pacific Ocean. And it's pretty much a story about their relocation to New Zealand and how they continued their culture and their language and their community in New Zealand. And yeah, that's looking into their life and their reasons for moving and how their lives developed in New Zealand.
I think it's so cool that as storytellers that you guys chose film. And I want to go to our first question. And why did you choose film as an artist? You know, why film?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that I love moving images. I love cinema, not only documentaries, but, across genres. And I think, when we talk about preservation of culture or a story, there are so many ways to do it. But I think choosing film allows you to have different layers where you can combine preservation of language, preservation of music, stories as well, right? I mean, oral histories are important, particularly for Tokelauans and Tokelau community. And that's something that's also very particular to their culture. The stories are being passed down to their kids and their grandkids. And I saw that, choosing a medium where you can have all of that combined at the same time, it's just going to have a stronger impact. And it's sort of it's going to engage the audience that then, if they felt something during the film, they can go on and maybe learn more, or they can look up certain things that they liked or something that they have questions about. So for me, I didn't really think twice about it. I knew that, telling the story through film is important because I also don't really get to see a lot of stories from such small and remote places in the world like Tokelau. So that was the main reason behind it.
I love it. I think it was really beautiful the way you put it. And now I want to connect it to Nick.
I think it's very similar to what Valeriya just said. For me also, it's very important to put all those elements together, like the film, the audio, and the narration. I mean, in my film, there's several narration passages where you hear the main character, the matriarch, Cornelia Walker Bailey, talk about her growing up on the island. And for me, I really wanted to bring her story and her life across through the film. So that's why you see a lot of aerial shots or drone shots that I intend to, the reason I chose them is so that people feel like they're really on the island in this environment, and we're like floating through that landscape with her memory in mind. So that was the idea, to bring those two together to really make it immersive. So to speak. And I've always been a filmmaker. I've never been a writer, really. I'm very more intuitive. So when I do these documentaries, I'm open to whatever I encounter in these different places. And I try to let the people or the environment tell the story, because I never know, of course, as I'm sure it's similar with you, Valeriya, you never know what to expect, really. You probably have a certain idea what the stories will be about, or their lives, but you'd never know because it's real life. It's unpredictable. So I'm just, waiting and absorbing and listening and then trying to capture all that in the film.
The next question is, why did you choose their stories? And what kind of incentive did you have going into the whole process of documenting their stories? Like, why did you choose the Giff people? Why did you choose that husband and wife of Tokelau? Nick, I would love for you to answer that question first.
This is probably a bit of a boring answer because it was coincidental. I mean, I did two community portraits before this. One was about a small community in the desert in a place called Death Valley in California, which to me was, I was just so curious to get to know the people who live in such a harsh environment where it's totally, there's not much around. And it's very small. It's like 50 people living there. So I had a good experience doing that. And the second movie, I did about a community in the Arctic in a very cold environment, and they were native Alaskans. And it was a good experience. And then I thought I will try to do at least a third film in this way, because it was well received. I liked doing it. And so I found it was a coincidence that somebody asked me, have you heard of the Geechee people or the Gullah Geechee people? And I said, no, I've never heard of them, but I was immediately interested because I'm always open to learning more things. And so then one thing led to the next. And I visited that place in Georgia in the US, and just to get to know, the area and some of the people. And then I found out that Cornelia was a prominent person on the island. And I found out that she read a book. I read her book, which is about her growing up on the island. And then I went back to start the project because I knew, or I didn't know, but I was hopeful that this would be some good material for a documentary. And so then it slowly started to get more and more a real project.
I appreciate that because I'm always curious, how did people stumble upon the stories they share, whether it be film or in visual art pieces? And yes, yeah, that's why I love this question.
It's a very good question. It's just I don't have a interesting answer. It's not like I always wanted to tell their story because I honestly did not know about that community beforehand. So I just learned about it, and that's when it started.
That's too cool. I love the coincidentalness of it. And maybe one can always think of it like you're meant to tell the story no matter what. But now for Valerie, how did you end up choosing this husband and wife and Tokelau in New Zealand?
It's sort of similar to Nick's answer because when I got to New Zealand, I was looking for a project, right? I knew I want to make a film, a documentary, a short, wasn't sure. And I went to New Zealand to do my MFA, and my advisor, one day he just said, why don't I introduce you to Mariana Vito? It might be good for you to meet someone. I didn't know anyone in that country, and I was looking for a project. So I said, why not? And I went over to their house in the suburbs of Wellington, and we just talked. I mean, they told me their life story. They asked me a lot of questions about where I'm from, because the more you travel and the more you end up in different countries, that sort of gets admitted. People don't really not everyone shows interest in where you're from. Everyone is sort of it's from somewhere, but they were really interested. I mean, Melly asked me questions like, do you remember the street where you grew up? And that was sort of, I think that started building that connection that I don't share with everyone. I mean, I heard the story of moving, and I didn't know a whole bunch about Tokelau at the time. And then I just got interested. I thought it's so important, to tell the story in this particular time, to also help them, share and preserve their story and the story of their community. Because the moment we chose Mariana Vito, we also chose their community, and their community was so welcoming for us that, I just got. And then, of course, I went and did a bunch of research. I looked at their whole history and, what it meant to move in the 70s from Tokelau to New Zealand, because it wasn't the same me moving to New Zealand or me going to Canada or the US. It's sure, it's a different environment and things are different, but they're not that different. And for them, I mean, when the plane landed in Auckland in the 70s and they got out of the plane, that was like a new world for them. Nothing was as it was on the islands. So I fell in love with them, their community, and I just thought that after that, I did not have a right not to tell story and not to be, you know, not to build that relationship with them.
I think it really shows the kind of relationship that you gained from them based off like being so touched by their stories when I saw the film, and just like being happy and feeling happy by the film ended. And I like the way you end the film. So job well done, because I can keep saying some more. But like all great films, and when we produce artworks, we're always going from point A to point B, the beginning of our project to the final product. And I always love creative process. And the most funnest part about creative process is the challenges and the obstacles and the hurdles that you have to jump over or experience just to complete that story. So yeah, what are some of the challenges, obstacles that you both face in telling the stories that you told in your film? So since we have you already, Valeriya,
Okay, sure.
please, like, what are some of the obstacles that you face?
Well, one of the first thing that I knew, that I really hope to have Tokelau language in the film, either through interviews or through music. But it was a challenge, right? Because I don't speak Tokelau, and no one in the crew really spoke in Tokelau. But I really wanted that to be part of it, because that's just another way for them to help share their language, but also have it actually recorded somewhere. But that was a bit of a challenge, and we had wonderful translators from the community that helped, you know, me and our editor. People came to the edit suite. We've translated things that were in Tokelau, and you know, they were just so generous with their help. The other, the challenge is always is this communication between you and the community, right? Because people give time and people share their stories, and they want to know how the project is going to be used, and of course what's in them from it, right? So I just always knew that we had to be transparent and also make sure that everyone knew, you know, how this piece of music is being used that is performed by the community, or what is happening with the film. And that's also something Melly was always really particular about, just to make sure that it's not only about her and Avita, but it also includes other members of their family and their community. Yeah. I mean, of course, the third challenge is, how do you try, what stories do you choose to keep in a short documentary? Because if I could, I'd made a feature film. Maybe one day I will, but it's just picking stories that were there to stay, and just sort of really tearing your heart apart for the stories that had to be just left, you know, not that didn't make it into the film. Yeah, that was the
I thought it was a job well
biggest.
done within that short time frame for a short documentary. I thought it was well done again.
Thank you.
I understood it. Now for you, Nick, how about for you? Because being from Switzerland, or having to keep traveling from space to space, like, how about you? What was your obstacles in telling these stories?
Also, that of course the main challenge, or the main focus for me, is always that I make a portrait that they are happy with and are also proud of in a way. And I hope in this case that it's also a memory, not a memory, what's the word? Like a souvenir of their of that time in their lives, to have something they can watch and that will be important for them in the future. And I was always, of course, very aware that I'm a total outsider of the community. And Cornelia had a way of putting that. She called me a kamya, as somebody who just came here to the island, and she and her people are binyas. And I wanted to make sure that these two words, kamya and binya, are mentioned in the film. And so that people understand, I am fully aware that I'm an outsider. But still, I try to make it as honest and as possible. And so I think that's always the main thing. And of course, there's a lot of technical stuff that is just a little annoying, but not very, problematic for me. But the main thing in that regard is, because I don't have a script, obviously, because it's a documentary, you never know what's going to happen. And I had some ideas in mind that totally didn't work, because it's not how turned out to be. And you never know if the people are going to be there. I mean, I called them beforehand. I said, I would like to come back. Can I stay at your place? And so on. And then, but maybe there's something important happens and they're not there. So there's always these unknowns that is always a bit, difficult to deal with. But you just have to be flexible and go with the flow. And that's what I did.
So my next question is, what was the turning point that drove your film home? What was that moment that just like, this is it, and this is how it's going to be done? So since Nick, I would love for you
I'm thinking it's a very good question. And it happens, the real moment happens in the editing, but it's also during filming. And in my case, it always takes a few. So how I work, I go to the location every few months. I mean, I did this 3 times now. So it's like 10 days in March, and then I go back to Switzerland where I do other things. And then like in June, I come back. So about 8 to 10 times I visit these places over the course of 2 years. And it's never at the beginning. I'm always like this. I'm not sure if this is even a documentary, if there's something there. I know I like the people and we get along, but you always have to have, like you say, the aha moment. And when I know that I have at least enough footage is the first mini aha moment where I can feel like, okay, I can make a film out of this. But then the real aha moment in my case is when you put it together and you add these elements, like I said before, with the narration in my case, and then the music and the shots. And when you realize the whole thing kind of makes sense, that's the aha moment. And that's another challenge because it happens quite late in the whole process. So you could end up with making a document or wanting to make a documentary, and then you realize, this is not going to work. And luckily, this hasn't happened before, but it's always a bit of many months of uncertainty until I know, okay, this can work out.
And how about for you, Miss Valeriya?
Yeah, I think for us, it also happened quite late in the editing stage. I mean, I had almost no choice. I was a film, it was happening. It had to work for that purpose. But I always felt like I think the aha moment was when we figured out what to do with transitions. And that's when I knew we have to go out and get those aerial drone shots. And when I knew exactly what it had to be, because we were struggling a little bit with, I didn't want to use any of the archival footage. It just felt so not, like it just didn't feel right for the film. But then I still knew I had, you needed like a good opening that would tie the film together, but that wouldn't reveal you the story, right? So that's exactly what the opening is. It sort of hooks you in. It's kind of ominous. You think might be, like, you don't know where that is, but you're being immersed in it right away. So I feel like when those shots came together and we knew where to put them, but also it ties it back. There is one quote from Millie's interview where she says, I want to go back to Tokelau and die there. So all of that, placing that at the end and tying it with the transition shots and with the whole story of, where is her heart? That was an aha moment for us when I knew that, all the different pieces came together and this is going to work.
Awesome. That was really good. Thank you very much, both Nick and Valeriya. And so what did you learn or gain in telling their story as a filmmaker? What did you gain from telling their stories as a filmmaker?
Not being from New Zealand and in a way also being, like an outsider, just the same way Mel and Avita were. I mean, we gained the whole crew, we gained family just on a basic human level. I mean, to me, if someone asks me about, my experience in New Zealand or whatever, it's, it's Mel and Avita. They're like my second family or, the family over there because, yeah, we did the project and we did a lot of filming with them and all of that. But before we even did that, like me and our producer and our sound person, we just would go to the hall and just hang out with them. Like we would make meals, we would play dominoes, like we would go to the church with, like, anything that we were doing was just there for us because we really wanted, we wanted to learn about their way of life. And we also wanted to show that you can build bridges between different cultures, right? You can, it's possible to make it work without exploiting it, without making some generalizations, without making it more of like, we're just here for the film, because it was never that. And I think, what we gain is that when we screened the film for the community at the hall, after it was done, people just started standing up and telling their story, like something, like a moment or a memory from Tokelau or about their experience in New Zealand. And that was so moving. I thought, wow, like on a human level, but also as a filmmaker, it just sort of gave me a bit more confidence that, everyone who's put work into that and the stories we're interested in and the kind of filmmaking we're interested in matters, because this was a response. We were totally blown away. And I remember one of the ladies said that, people like to think that they are inclusive of us, but we're actually very inclusive of other people coming in and experiencing our culture. And I thought that was very powerful to put it that way, that, it's never one-sided, but you always, so I don't know what else to say. I'm just getting all, I just remembering that, all the moments we shared, like where, it's a friendship. Even, I'm not there at the moment, but we still talk, people message. I just had, actually yesterday, there is this young woman that reached out to me. She's a Tokelau Samoan born, and she's currently studying in the US. And she said that she grew up in a place where Mariana lives, and she heard about the film and she wants to watch it. And I thought, wow, okay, this is really, this is traveling around and people reaching out. And, when we're working on it, we never thought that, like, that was never the goal to like get it into as many film festivals or whatever. But I just really hope that people from other cultures could relate and they could gain something from it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Would you like to?
I think that, the friendship is the main thing, because I'm still in contact with all of them and even visit them when they're off the island in different places. And the problem this time was I have not been back on the island since this COVID thing started, because we're not even allowed to enter the US for 2 years now. They're opening up again November 9th. So I have not been able to see them in quite a while. But of course, we're still in contact, and I look forward to seeing them all again. And of course, I will continue to stay in touch, because we are now friends. And what I also like, this is from my last film, we had a chance to to share each other's culture in a way, because they were here. The people from Alaska were here at the Zurich Film Festival. We invited them to attend. And for them, it was, of course, like the opposite experience. Them being here was a huge deal to them too, because they got to see how I live for a change, because I've been in their world for the longest time, and now they were here. And it was just an interesting way to see each other's way of life. And so I think that's the lasting thing, is that we just stay friends and stay connected.
And that's just the beautiful thing about being artists, we get to speak louder, especially through film, and captivating us. And I think both of your storytellings, again, has done that. So what advice can you offer based off of your personal experiences to emerging filmmakers now? And since Nick, we have you, can you start us off?
Sure. I always say, it's so easy today to make films even with an iPhone camera. I always say, and this sounds very simple, but just do it. Because I hear a lot of, people who want to be filmmakers, they always say, oh no, I cannot do it because of this and this and this and this. It's too expensive or too complicated. And I always say, no, it's not. Because I started also with doing like family videos. Well, back then it was not the iPhone, but it was just a very simple camera, and just practice and film your environment first, and then try to put the whole thing together, try to edit it, work with music, and just go out there and do it. because it's always sad when I hear people who just talk about wanting to make films and then never do it. And the other advice, of course, and this is only for documentaries, is to just be open-minded and patient, and to listen and not be pushy and annoy people while they're trying to make a film. But it depends on the person. You just have to be, you cannot be somebody who wants to do like boom, 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 get things done very quickly, because that's not going to work, in my opinion, if you want to do a documentary. If you want to do like a news story, maybe it's the opposite. You have to be fast and be able to react and be a little pushy to get things done in a short amount of time. But the way my documentaries are, they're more like long-term and just don't have that urgency. So you just have to be patient and take your time doing these things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything that Nick said. And I also, I think also trust your guts, especially in documentary filmmaking. I mean, of course, you need to be sensitive and, you know, do your research and be patient with people, but also sometimes you'll hear a lot of voices or a lot of feedback that sometimes, I mean, it's great feedback, but if you know what you know, then stick to your guts and your intuition, because that's probably, you know what's sort of best for the story or for the people you're working with. In general, I would say, yeah, just keep at it, because I do hear a lot of people also say, you know, I want to be a director, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then do it. I mean, I know it might sound a bit like it's easy for you to say, but I think, you know, you can use a phone or you can find little stories in your own life or in your own experience that you can sort of practice with. And I also would say, working with people, find your tribe in a way. Like if you're collaborating with someone or you have other people that you see need support, just support them. Don't think that I mean, especially in documentary world, I feel like it's not so, you know, commercialized to think that all of this is a competition. I think there is space for everyone, and there is so much space for all of the stories that are not told. That just, you know, stay human, you know, keep at it, and just you know, trust yourself in the process.
Thank you very much. Those I would even take that. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, but I'll take that as a fellow artisan as well. Do you guys have any questions for each other as fellow filmmakers?
No, I want to say I really liked Valeriya's film. I thought it was beautifully made, and I was moved by the story. And I just wish you will make a feature documentary soon.
No.
I'm sure you're planning anyway. That was really good. I really liked it. And of course,
Thank
there were
you.
some similarities. I could see some similarities in the filmmaking style also.
Yeah, I watched Sapelo last night, and it was just like, this is my best Friday night watch. Oh, really? Because I mean, the boys, the relationship between them and their relationship to the Cornelia, just that relationship that the, you know, younger generation has with grandparents. I mean, it's similar to us as well. Like, it's also a question of because she says at some point, right? She said that she hopes that culture and the land and our language and traditions would sort of stay with them. And it's it's the same for Melly and Avita. They really hope that through their work and through their patience of trying to preserve their language and culture, it's gonna stay alive, maybe in a different form and in a different place, but it will carry on. Yeah. So thank you for your film as well.
Oh, thank you. I really noticed the similarities with keeping the culture alive in a way. So that was it was like an aha moment for me. That was very similar.
And with that in mind, we say Suzus Maasi. For our viewing audience, please visit us at the Guam International Film Festival.org for more information about our film festival and schedule. On behalf of myself and this amazing panel, I want to once again say Suzus Maasi and goodbye.